Hey guys, welcome. If this is your first time seeing my channel, I'm Chicago Bass Buddy. I provide educational content on YouTube. I teach private lessons. If you're interested in that, you can message me. And of course, I play a lot of music around Chicago, sometimes around the country. I tend to cater with my educational stuff online towards more intermediate players, but today I want to make a lesson for one of the most essential concepts and questions that I get from beginner bassists. Whenever I teach somebody who's kind of just got a bass guitar, they're just getting into this world, one of the first questions they always ask me is, how do I learn the names of the different notes? And this is such a, I think, intimidating thing for beginners, but it actually doesn't need to be that hard. Over the course of this lesson, I'm going to walk you through what you need to know and how to practice it. There's a couple things you do need to memorize. There's no getting away from it. But for the most part, we can also rely on some tricks and shortcuts if we understand how this fretboard works. So you won't have to memorize every single fret. You'll need to memorize a few, and then from there, I'll show you how to extrapolate the rest of the notes. Cool. Now, before we jump into the how do we do this thing, some of you might be wondering about the why do we do it, or do I need to do it? And that's a really smart question to ask. There's so much music, education stuff out on the internet. You don't want to work on everything somebody tells you to because you'll be overwhelmed with too many things. So it'd be smart to say, do I really need to learn this? Like, let's say you're a beginner who's been learning songs with tab so far, 3, 5, 3, 5, 7, 3. You might say that's kind of working for me. Well, fair enough. If it's working for you, maybe you don't need this. But let me give you 3 reasons why I think it's smart to spend some time learning the names of the notes. Number 1, learning the names of the notes actually is going to make it much more manageable for you to learn and remember new songs. If you're trying to learn songs and you're just kind of memorizing strings of numbers, 3, 5, 3, 5, 0, 3, 5, 3, how in the world are you going to retain that? We're not robots, we're not computers. We can't just memorize a string of numbers like that, at least not for long. You might be able to learn 1 or 2 songs that way, but then you'll forget them if you try to go further and add more. Learning the note names is going to help you learn songs. Number 2, if you want to communicate with other musicians, you've got to know the names of the notes. If you watch any of my other videos and you don't know the names of your notes, you're not going to get anywhere. You won't understand what I'm talking about. Or what if you play in a band someday with a piano player and they say, play an E flat? What are you going to do? They don't know what fret it is. They're not a bass player. If you don't know what an E flat is, you're dead in the water. The third reason is that if you want to learn music theory, which is kind of like the gateway to improvisation, understanding how chords work, understanding how songs are written, you have to know and think in terms of note names. So hopefully I've sold you. How do we do it though? Well, there's a concept we need to get, and then we'll start memorizing a couple basic things. The concept is that we have a musical alphabet. We have letters that we use to refer to different notes. Now, you already know this, I think. You've heard somebody talk about a C or an E flat or a G or maybe a chord name like F major. We use letters. Specifically, we use the letters A through G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now, the musical alphabet doesn't actually have a beginning and an end. It's just a sequence that repeats over and over. Every time we get to G, the next note becomes A and it starts over. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it's just a cycle that never ends. I can actually play this across the bass. Don't worry about the notes that I'm playing or where they're at. Just notice how the letters work. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. The next note would be B, after that would be C. It goes on. And if I had a bass with enough frets, this would just never end. So the alphabet just goes in one direction. And something I want you to notice, as we go up the alphabet, from A to B, from B to C, from C to D, the pitch is always getting higher. A, up to B, up to C, up to D, up to E, F, G, A. If I want the pitch to go lower, I have to go down the alphabet. I have to go backwards. A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. And then we just go back down to G. G, F, E. This is a cycle. It's like a ladder that we're just climbing up and down, from A up to G, and from G down to A. Now, there's these things called sharps and flats. You're probably aware of that. We're going to talk about it in this video, but not yet. Let's get the basic letter names first, and then we'll worry about that sharp and flat stuff. Here comes the one and only segment in this video that you just need to memorize, and it's the letter notes in your first 4 frets. I'm going to put a little chart on the screen that I often give to really new students. And you just got to memorize this. There's no way around it. I wish I had a shortcut for you, but I don't. You won't have to memorize too much for this stuff, but this is the one thing you just have to sit and memorize this. Let's talk through what you're seeing. And you've got a head start because you probably already know the names of your strings. If you can tune your bass, you know that this is an E, that's an A, here's a D, here's a G. And if you have a 5 string, you've got a B down there. Those count. Those are notes. And they're all letters, right? E, A, D, and G. Let's work on the lowest string first. So we've got our E string. Now remember how that musical alphabet works. If I'm on E and I'm going up higher, the note that I'm going to get to is F. F is on the 1st fret. And from F, what comes next in the alphabet? G. G is on the 3rd fret. That's all you need to memorize for your E string. Open is E, 1st fret is F, 3rd fret is G. E, F, G, just going up the alphabet. Now in the A string, we start with A. Now, what comes next in the alphabet? B. It's on our 2nd fret. C is on our 3rd fret. A, B, C. Again, just up the alphabet. Now, D string, D, and we're going to go up the alphabet. E is on the 2nd fret, F is on the 3rd fret. D, E, F. G, up the alphabet. We're at the end, right? We're at G. So what happens? The alphabet starts over. We're going to get to an A. It's on our 2nd fret, and then a B on our 4th fret. G, A, B. So if I just play up the lettered named notes on the first 4 frets, I get E, F, G. Now I have to switch strings. A, B, C. Switch strings. D, E, F. Switch strings. G, A, B. So I kind of went up the alphabet like 1.5 times. Some of these notes got played twice, didn't they? We played A 2 times. I played it down here, the open A string, and I played it on the 2nd fret of my G string. Now you might notice those don't sound completely the same. That one's lower, that one's higher. So why in the world are we calling them the same note? Well, in music, we sometimes talk about different pitches like that as having the same note name because they sound really similar. There's something about the character of these 2 pitches kind of sounds the same. And if there's a spot in a song where we need to play an A, either one of them will work equally well. So we just call them both A. Now there's math behind that, but we certainly won't get into that in this video. For now, just kind of take my word on it, that sometimes notes with the same name might sound higher or lower than each other. Like these 2 A's, or these 2 E's. More on that later in this video because we're going to use that to actually shortcut our way into learning the rest of the fretboard without memorizing it. For now, your first piece of homework, your first practice, maybe spend 5 minutes on this every day until you've got it down. Go up and down those first few frets, just naming the notes. E, F, G, A, about playing it fast when you do it. Just want you to get the notes down. And for now, I'd say don't get too caught up in the technique and like what fingers am I supposed to use. Yeah, we want to think about all that, but not yet. We'll have to worry about that later. You can only learn so many things at once. For now, just focus on playing them the best that you can. Okay, so what about these sharps and flats? What's the deal with that? Well, here's where it gets a little bit more complicated. What I'm about to say makes a ton of sense on a piano, which is where this all comes from. On a keyboard, it's extremely intuitive. On a bass, unfortunately, it's not. But stick with me. I think it'll make sense if you just stay with it and you're patient. Some of these notes have another pitch between them that doesn't have a letter name. So let's take, for example, on our open A string. I already told you that the open string is the A and the second fret is a B. So we've got A, second fret is a B. But what about the first fret? It's higher than an A, but it's lower than a B. So what do we call that? Well, this is where sharps and flats come in. In the full musical alphabet, some of the notes that are simply called a letter have a pitch between them that's a sharp or a flat. In music, sharp just means higher than. So this extra note that falls between A and B, I could call it A sharp. I'm taking my A and I'm making it sharp, meaning higher than. It's higher than an A. Flat means lower than. So I could also call the same note a B flat. I'm taking my B on the second fret and I'm playing it flat. I'm playing it lower than the B. So we've got A sharp, B. Or I could call it, same notes, I could call it A, B flat, B. Because A sharp and B flat are the same pitch. It's here on the first fret. Okay, I know it's kind of confusing at first. Just sit with it, give yourself time to make sense of this, and it will make sense. Here's a different way to think about it. This might help you digest it. As far as the bass guitar is concerned, anytime something is sharp, you see C sharp or F sharp or G sharp, find that letter note and then go up one fret. So G sharp, I got to find a G. I've got an open string that's a G, right? So if I just go up one fret, there's a G sharp. What about if somebody says play a D sharp? Okay. Again, I've got an open string for that. I go up one fret, D sharp. Sharp is always one fret higher than. Flat is always one fret lower than. So what if somebody says play an E flat? Well, I've got an open E, but I can't go lower than that. So I'll have to find it on the fretboard. We're in the process of learning that the second fret on our D string is an E. This is an E. Okay, so they said E flat, I go down one fret. There's an E flat. What if somebody says play a B flat? And let's go up high. Let's say, okay, I've got a B here, fourth fret of my G string. And you know that because you memorized the letter names in your first few frets. Again, you just got to memorize those. There's no way around that part. Here's a B. If I lower it one fret, got B flat. What if somebody said, I'll kind of do some rapid fire here, F sharp. A couple places you could play it, but you could go, here's my low F, up one fret is an F sharp. If somebody says E flat, is it higher or lower than an E? It's lower. Flat is always lower. If somebody says C sharp, is it higher or lower than a C? It's higher. Sharp is always higher. This will make sense when you sit with it if it doesn't yet click. So with that, I can now name every single note in my first four frets. E, F, I could call this F sharp or G flat, G G sharp or A flat, A sharp or B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp or E flat, E, F, F sharp. Kind of get the idea. Now, let me back up and say something. Here's the last confusing thing, I swear. Between B and C, and between E and F, there is no sharp or flat note. Basically, for our purposes, you can just trust for the time being that there's basically no such thing as B sharp, and there's no such thing as C flat. There is no note between them. B is the second fret of our A string, C is the third fret. There's nothing between them. There is no B sharp, there is no C flat, at least for our purposes. Same thing with E and F. E and F are right next to each other. I can play it up down low if I want. There's no E sharp, there's no F flat, at least not for our purposes. Everything else has sharps or flats, but between B and C and between E and F, there isn't one. Okay, so now let me explain this differently. Let's spell out the whole musical alphabet because you know everything you need to know for it now. Here's the full musical alphabet. There are 12 notes and only 12 notes, at least in Western music, meaning pop music, classical music, rock, jazz, blues, funk, all that stuff that we listen to here in the US. There's only 12 notes. A sharp or B flat. I'll count the notes. B, C. You can watch me struggle with my fingers. C sharp or D flat. D. D sharp or E flat. E, F. F sharp or G flat, that's 10. G. G sharp or A flat. And now we're back to the beginning. We're back to A. You can now spell out the whole alphabet on each of these strings. Let's do it on our low string, E. This is a good way to practice this stuff. We're going to go up every single fret and name each note. E, F, F sharp. I could call it G flat too, that's fine. I'm just going to call it F sharp. G, A flat, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, E flat, E. Now there's no rhyme or reason to why I called some of them sharp and some of them flat. You can just pick one for now. We just want you to be able to find it. Later on, there'll be reasons why you might use one or the other, but that's many lessons down the road. For now, we just want you to understand how to name these notes and what to call them. Okay, let's do the same thing. I'm going to leave some pauses this time. If you're watching this, I want you to do your best to try to say the answer before I do. Let's start with our open D. Okay, what comes next? Think about that musical alphabet. It's on the screen. D sharp or E flat. And that means we go to E, F. What goes from there? F sharp or G flat. That means we go to G. Next, call it G sharp. A. What's next? Why don't we call it B flat? B, C. We're almost back around. C sharp or D flat. D. Okay. Now I know that this, if you're really new to this stuff and you didn't kind of halfway know it already, your head might be swimming a bit right now. That's cool. Don't panic. You're not bad at it. This is just complicated stuff. It's going to take some time to sink in. This is hard for new students, so don't feel like you're behind the curve. You're not. Practice this stuff. Practice what we just did. Go up and down the musical alphabet. You don't even need your bass. When you're standing in the shower, killing time, you're dissociating, you're having imaginary arguments with people, practice a musical alphabet instead. Okay, A, and then there's A sharp or B flat, B, and then it goes right to C. C sharp or D flat, D, D sharp or E flat, E, F, F sharp or G flat, G, G sharp or A flat, A. Cool. You can try going down it. G, G flat, F, E, D sharp, D, D flat, C, B, B flat, A. Cool. You'll get it in no time. Now, what about the rest of this? I imagine right now some of you are like, oh my God, is he about to tell me I need to memorize, like, what do I have here, 25 frets or something? No, you don't. You need to memorize those first four. I don't really know a way to do this without memorizing those first four. I wish I did. First four you got to memorize. After that, you've got some shortcuts. There's two of them. I'm going to walk you through them. First shortcut to be aware of. The 12th fret is a very important fret on the map of the fretboard. The 12th fret is where there's two dots. It's the only place, unless you have a really long fretboard like I do, it's basically the only place where you're going to see two dots. But every guitar or bass you see will have two dots on the fretboard, and there's a reason. They want you to be able to find that easily. It also has two dots up here, you might notice. The reason the 12th fret is important is it's where the fretboard starts over. This is a low E. This is also an E. It's a higher E. Low A, higher A. Low D, higher D. Low G, higher G. So check this out. If I know from having memorized it that down here I've got open E, F, F sharp, G. Guess what I have up here? Same notes in the same order. E, F, F sharp, G. You might be starting to hear how they kind of sound the same. Even though one set is higher, it sort of sounds the same. If you were to try to sing it, they would both probably sound the same for a singer. It's the same notes. They're just one's higher, one's lower. It's what we call different octaves, which maybe we'll talk about in another video. So you now know a lot of this. If you've memorized this, you also have memorized this. That takes care of another chunk of the fretboard. And this carries over. Everything up here is the same. The dots are even the same. That's why they make guitars with the dots where they are. If I know that fretted 3rd fret where there's a dot on my A string, if I know that this is a C, that's a C as well, because it's the first dot past my 12th fret. If I know that this one's an F, that's an F. It's the same thing. You can almost imagine that the fretboard starts right here. So if you memorize this, you will have automatically memorized this as well. That's going to save you some time. What else, though? Well, the second trick is what we call an octave shape. Now, octaves, it's this idea we've been getting at, that you can play the same note, one lower and one higher, and it can still be the same note and sound sort of identical. Those are both A's. On a piano keyboard, for example, there's, depending on the size of the keyboard, like 5, 6, or 7 octaves for each note. 5, 6, or 7 different E's, 5, 6, or 7 different B flats. On the bass, we don't have quite as many, but we have a couple. Octave notes always have the same name. A and A, B flat and B flat, G sharp and G sharp. And it's a really easy shape. Grab any note on your E or A string. I happen to note this is a F sharp here, 2nd fret. If I go 2 strings up, 2 strings higher, and 2 frets up, again I mean higher in pitch, 2 strings up and 2 frets up, I get this. Anywhere on the fretboard, that shape will be an octave. You can recognize it by the sound once you've studied it and gotten it in your ear. Let me just move that shape around for a second. I'm not even going to think about where I play it. Each pair of notes kind of sounds like it goes together, right? You can even play them at the same time. It's an octave. And a second ago, I told you something. I'm going to repeat it again. Octave notes have the same name. And musical alphabet. This is a B, and that's a B. Guess what that does for you? It opens up a lot of this. Because if you've memorized those first four frets, you've memorized that this is a G. I can go an octave up. Hey, there's a G, 5th fret of my D string. Now, I haven't told you anything about memorizing the 5th fret, but I found it with this octave shape. If I memorize that this is a C sharp, there's a C sharp. I'm now on the 6th fret of my G string. We certainly haven't talked about the 6th fret. We haven't memorized it, but I can use this octave shape. Over time, as you start to kind of branch your way up, you're going to then automatically begin to remember some of these. Over time, you'll start to know, okay, yeah, that's a D. Well, if that's a D, that's a D. I'm starting to get pretty darn close to that 12th fret, and once I get to the 12th fret, the whole thing starts over. So, here's your practice. Oh, hopefully I didn't disconnect my audio. No, I didn't. All right, here's your practice. We've already talked about a few things. You got to memorize those first 4 frets. And we talked about the idea that you can go up a whole string, naming the alphabet. E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, all the way up. The rest of your practice looks like this. Think of any note name from the musical alphabet. Don't overthink it. I just mean like think of a random one. Like if I asked you to pick a number 0 to 10, you might just say 7. It's like that. C sharp. Okay, now I got to find 2 C sharps on the bass. Okay, there's one here on the 4th fret. Hopefully I've memorized that. Got to memorize the first 4 frets. I don't have another one memorized, but I could use my octave shape. Okay, there's a C sharp. And you just look at it and you take it in. Those are both C sharps. Cool. You move on, pick another one. F. Bit of an easier one, but we'll do it. F. I got to find 2 Fs. Okay, I know I've got my low one. I've memorized that. Hopefully I've also memorized that I have this one here. 3rd fret of the D string. D, E, F. B flat. Okay, I've got this, and I've got this. Now I memorized both of those. What about something I haven't memorized? Let's say, I'm trying to think of something that'll trick you a little bit. Well, let's say C. So here's the C. It's the only C in those first 4 frets. So this is all I've got memorized. I'm going to have to use that octave shape to find the next one. There's a C. Practice that. Pretty soon you'll have the first 5 or 6 frets pretty well covered. Now this middle area, you might be thinking, what do I do there? What if I'm looking at a tab and it says play the 10th fret of the D string? And I don't know what to call that, and I don't know the notes here, so I can't kind of figure it out with an octave. You go to the closest note on D that you do know. Here's F sharp. Maybe that's as far as I've gotten. And you go up the musical alphabet. F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. Okay, I'm at the 10th fret. I guess my 10th fret is a C. That's one way to do it. The other thing you could do, if you're really a pattern person, you might have thought of this already. Remember how we know the name of our 12th fret? This is a D, right? The name of the 12th fret, same as the name of the open strings. E, A, D, G. This is a D. I'm trying to figure out the 10th fret. Just count down the musical alphabet. D, D flat, C. Okay, 10th fret C. Either way, I got to the same answer because this stuff all works that way. There's no tricks. It's not going to give you the wrong answer as long as you've got the alphabet down. All right, so that's the last thing you can do is as you're working on songs, maybe from tab or whatever source you're using, maybe you're watching videos and just trying to figure out where people are putting their fingers just with your eyes. Cool. Name the notes. You don't have to do the whole song. I know that would take forever. If it's like a 3-minute song, it might take a long time to break down every single note, but work on a few. All right, the song starts on, let's say the 6th fret of the A string. All right, well, I know this is a C, C sharp, D, D sharp, or I could call it E flat. Cool. Over time, this is all going to start to click and make sense. And seriously, trust me when I say that if you spend like 5 or 10 minutes working on this stuff in, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 weeks, you're kind of going to have this down. You're really not going to have to think that hard. You'll have quite a few of them memorized, probably more than you expect. And the ones that aren't memorized, you'll be able to figure out. So while I know this probably feels like a lot, this is very academic. It's not intuitive on this instrument. It's more intuitive on other instruments. Lucky them, right? I know it's tricky at first, but you can totally get this. That said, if you're feeling stumped, if you're like, man, I am sincerely trying and I have been for a couple weeks and I just feel like I'm getting nowhere, reach out to me. We can set up a one-on-one lesson or something like that. And of course, there's other great resources online. Some people find it valuable to like draw out the fretboard and kind of write the name of every note. I don't necessarily recommend that to students because that just sort of amounts to memorizing the whole fretboard. And I sincerely think that if you can wrap your head around some of these patterns and just the musical alphabet, that's going to be an easier road for you than memorizing the names of, 15 frets times 4 strings. It's 60 things to memorize. I think that's going to be pretty dull for you and pretty discouraging. So try this method, try this stuff. Drop me a comment to let me know what makes sense and to let me know what questions you have. There's no shame in having questions. This is tricky stuff. That said, thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here. I hope this is helpful. Hope it helps you learn and sink your teeth into this instrument. And I'll see you in another video. Take care.